Hello, and welcome to episode 9 of Talking Point. My name is Chelsea Sikora. I'm the creative director for the Eau Claire Area Chamber of Commerce, coming to you from the Wind Technology Studio, and we want to thank our media sponsor, Royal Credit Union. In today's episode, Chamber President and CEO Dave Miner sits down with current board chair Andy Neborak of Impact Advertising and incoming board chair Valerie Fedie of Wipfli. Together, they discuss chamber highlights from 2024 and the goals for 2025. Take it away, Dave.
So, Andy, as the current chair, looking back over 2024, what would you say are some of the highlights that you feel the chamber had an impact on and just really made a difference maybe here in our community?
Yeah, I gave some thought to this. There's a lot of things and we don't have enough time to mention all of them, but tried to think of something within each of our 4 pillars here at the Chamber. Our pillars, of course, are advocacy, investor engagement, education, and workforce, and tried to think of something that maybe stood out in each one. I think the thing that first comes to mind for me and probably a lot in our community is the hospital closures and Purveya closures. And, that kind of starts off with advocacy, how the Chamber took a lead role in really convening a group of community influencers to create that task force.
Correct.
And so, that I think was a huge piece to the first half of our year. And that task force, was really able to, I think the most noteworthy thing is retain, that HSHS foundation money that was invested in our community. The task
Correct,
force
yeah.
was able to take a lead role into keeping that here. So I think that was a huge accomplishment among many other things. Our investor engagement, we look at ribbon cuttings. I just did one this morning. I believe we're over 70 for the year, which is a great way to engage new businesses, businesses that have grown or changed locations, or businesses that are new to us, that
Correct.
are just joining us for the first time. We've had Bravo to Business, had record numbers at 300 people. Our Business After Hours has continued to be popular, 125, I'm told, for each of the 5 we've had. So our investor engagement is strong. Education, I look at that one, and I first come to Leadership 2.0. And I'm sure that would be near the top of your list, Dave.
Yes, it is. Very much.
And it's really that next step to our Leadership Eau Claire program that has been wildly successful over the years. And it's been many years in the making. So it was great to be able to launch that kind of next step and really more focused leadership curriculum.
Correct.
Where the Leadership Eau Claire program is maybe a little more indirect leadership curriculum, I guess is how I would maybe put it. Valerie can maybe chime in when I'm done because she went through the program. Sadly, I did not. I don't know if I should mention that on air. We'll move on. Workforce. That is our final pillar.
There we go.
And really, I look at the steering panel that we put together there. I think it's a unique way that Tina has tried to gather some feedback from business owners and hiring managers, people that are busy that maybe can't make a regular meeting. The method in which that is done, I think, is a great way to gather feedback to help guide our programming. So
and it was
that was long-winded. But,
no, that's okay. And it was kind of fun building that because we built around the concept of join a committee that's never going to meet. Again, to your point, everybody is busy. This is the way, though, that we can get that critical feedback from HR, small business owners, what have you, to do that. And so we make sure we're operating the programs that are best affecting them as the businesses. So Valerie, looking at 2024, one of the, I would say, big successes for me outside of what Andy talked about was really seeing our board take a day and a half to really focus on our strategic plan for 2025. And, one, I'm always very appreciative that, we get 25, 30 some board members to take that time off, leave town to do this. But this year was much different for me, having somebody as yourself who does this for, part of your job is going in and helping businesses walk the. How did you see that strategic plan versus some of the past ones? And how do you see that really maybe refocusing the chamber as we move forward into some uncharted areas?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dave. In terms of what really unfolded at this year's strategic plan, I think was a more concerted effort to not only focus on the pillars that we have been building upon, but really setting short and long-term goals and then action items on how to achieve those goals. And so as we focused on enhancing our community leadership, just to strengthen that federal and local advocacy that obviously Scott Rogers does a a tremendous job with, but also just how we engage with our young professionals, how we are, strengthening our YP as we have combined with Chippewa. We saw we invited actually 5 YP members to our strategic planning meeting for the first time. And it was really exciting to see the next generation and their ideas being brought to the table on how to make this community, the business community and everything that's going on work together. So that was exciting. The continuation of just how, again, we can advocate best for businesses was top of mind in all of our pillars. And really as the staff was working through their areas of focus and development, really putting a lot of thought into what's next. What can we do in a different light and how are we going to get there? Obviously, strategic planning is important for any organization, but if you don't set the execution plan on how you're going to get there, it's really difficult to do so.
Very much.
So absolutely, this year was so much excitement. All the board really came together with those YP members, with the staff, and really put a plan in place to achieve great things in the future. So it was exciting.
One of the things that, question for both of you to kind of touch on a little bit, but one of the things that came out of this year's plan, and as an exec committee, we started talking about this was maybe a year and a half or so ago, is applying what all of you, for the most part in the private sector, use KPIs, and it in the nonprofit world, so much that's still pretty new to us here. So, but how do you see that helping us make sure we are held accountable to that?
I think it just shows kind of that progress, right? We're both numbers people here. So, I feel like you can attach a number to anything, to be able to measure success. And, I think the first question you got to ask yourself, Dave, we've talked about it multiple times, is what defines success in a certain event or program or, whatever it may be. And I think at times, you may ask a room of the staff and you may get 3 different answers,
Correct.
From the room. So, I think that's a huge moment to be able to figure out, what that success looks like, establish what your baseline is now, and then, you can set your goals moving forward. So I just think it's a great thing to work through, and not only to strengthen the team internally, but to share externally. I think it gets harder and harder at times to be able to continue to communicate the value of the chamber. Well, what better way, than to be able to show some of the progress, because you can believe in what we do, and we all do. That's why we're a part of it. But some people need to see that data. And we need
Correct.
to be able to serve those people and show them what we do. Valerie, I'll let you chime in here too.
With KPIs, it's really important. There's going to always be the quantitative metrics, but also the qualitative metrics.
Right.
With a strategic plan, I mentioned short and long-term goals. If we don't have something quarterly or that North Star holding us accountable to those achievements, it's really sometimes hard to stay on track, especially in our community when so many things are being thrown at us at any given day. And so I think the strategic planning went really well with regards to evaluating those KPIs, setting them, and then working towards them.
Well, one of the things I love about a strategic plan, but certainly about ours, is it helps me say no. As you just said, every day somebody's calling saying, you should do this, you should do this, you should do it. And, with that, I can go back and say, I'm sorry, that's not within what we need to truly focus on. Now, we'd have the outliers like the hospital and now the homelessness, but it really, but more importantly, it also helps me tell those folks where, this is the group you need to help you in that. So I think for a lot of people, so they understand that strategic plan is to help just in their business. It helps us keep focused on those things we really need to be doing for our investors, because no different than any other business, we have limited time and limited resources. So what can we do that has the highest return for investment on those businesses that are truly, spending the money to help us accomplish those things? So that kind of leads us into an area a little bit about, outreach and community partnerships and things. How do you, as 2 business owners, representatives, board members, you're on other groups, how do you see the image of the chamber across our community with other entities, be the city, the county, the Visit Eau Claire, EDC, any of those that you see? Do you believe that we have a strong relationship with them?
I feel we play a role where a lot of these, I think I mentioned them, community influencers, those organizations before, they all talk to us. they don't always talk to each other.
Right.
And so, we talk about being a convener and getting people in a room. I think it's a great opportunity for our chamber to serve in that role, because there may be two organizations that would sit in the same room together, but they maybe wouldn't set up a meeting with each other.
Right.
So that's where I think we really add value, is to be able to reach out to all those organizations and be able to bring them in, figure out who does what and who does what well. And, if you don't do that the best, get the heck out of the way. Figure out what you're going to be the convener for and what you're going to be the champion for.
Right.
You can't champion everything, because you'll do none of it well.
Exactly.
So, if you can convene that group and find the champion, that's where I think the chamber can really shine.
Yeah. And I would say for a lot of our listeners out there too, as an industry, we have changed, certainly coming out of COVID. We are not the chamber industry that we were in the 2020s and prior. Today it is, and you've both mentioned it, we focus on being a 3C chamber. Are we the convener? Are we the ones bringing people together? Because a lot of times, as we're talking right now, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to convene a coalition to help deal with homelessness. We have been approached by businesses in city and county that, can somebody pull everybody together just to sit down and focus on a plan? We can do that. We're that independent group, or as I've been adopted since January 22nd, we're Switzerland. We're just going to get everybody to talk, but at times, to your point, Andy, that's what's needed, is somebody that can do it. Or are we the champion? Or are we the catalyst? But be able to still focus on those on those three pieces within our pillars, to be able to know what we can do well. We talked about some of the successes. What would you, either one of you, if you look back at 2024, really maybe take a look at? And Andy, you talked about the hospital, but maybe challenges that you think we had that maybe stretched us or something.
Yeah, the easy answer is the hospitals, and I think the challenge that we've seen is, you mentioned time resources, right?
Yeah.
In the hospital, it took, that effort took some time. So did it maybe slow down some other priorities that we have? Yeah, I think we can be honest and say that maybe
Sure.
some timelines changed. I think it's a matter of, how do you balance those resources? How do you prioritize? I don't think there's any question that the hospital effort was the priority, and
Sure.
it took priority as it should.
Yep.
But then some other things just may not happen as quickly as you'd like. And so, I think the challenge as we round out this year and head into next is to kind of re-timeline some of those things out. And, hey, let's not forget we were working on
Right.
this.
Yep.
And, what's our new realistic timeline to accomplish that or goal?
Well, I think to your point on that one, Andy, as I look at a couple of things, a year ago at the annual meeting, we talked about we were going to initiate the formation of a manufacturing council. And again, that was, I think, a week after we heard the news, and here we were putting a task force together. What was very nice about that, a lot of those manufacturers reached out immediately to Scott Biederman or myself and said, hey, we know you're not going to be doing this right now. We understand. So we're still here. We want it. You let us know when your capacity is back at a level you can do it. And so we're already looking at trying to convene that shortly after the first of the year to start that group and get that input from that sector.
And I would say that situation's kind of unique, right? Because those manufacturers are large employers. So
Yes.
what we are working on in healthcare probably impacted them and their workforce considerably.
Yes.
So, if you would have had any challenge engaging with them before, you may be in a better position to really engage with
Correct.
them currently, because they've now sseen what you've done to help them.
Absolutely.
You might be in a better place to do it now than you were at the beginning of the year, to be honest.
And that's a couple of them actually mentioned that. So that's a very good point. So Valerie, you've been, we'll call it second chair to Andy for this year and watching and everything. As you look at 2025, and again, having a very strong hand in helping us lead that strategic planning process, what are you looking at? What do you want to see us accomplish when we're sitting here in December of 2025 and talking about what we did this year? What are you hoping to see us accomplish as an organization?
I think that if we go back to what we discussed, and as the community and the world is changing rapidly, is we are putting the right focus and resources on the most immediate needs in the community. And so even though our strategic plan had very defined advocacy pillars, very defined workforce pillars. We still have to tackle those issues that are front and center. You mentioned the homelessness. I know that our board meeting we've been talking about how that's impacting businesses, especially if we look back on how many businesses came together to create this downtown that we have today that's amazing and beautiful. And it's so, again, from the strategic planning, I think that we left room for some short-term
we did.
paths along the way that we knew that we were going to have to take maybe a sidestep and again address in a different manner.
Well, and I think so, again, all of our listeners truly understand, again, one of the big changes, that we have done since COVID and came out of COVID was we do look at the community today differently than as an industry we ever have. I mean, all chambers look at a community, but I think it took COVID for us to realize really what is that greater impact. We've been stating it for several years that, yes, we have the 1,000 investors or whatever, but it's that 45,000 lives that we impact every day that we got to remember. Every decision that gets made in the boardroom next to us affects every single one of those people. So for our listeners to understand, we do take a look at those issues, those concerns that are affecting positively or negatively our community, and how do we factor into that? How do we play into that? Because it's not just every single business who pays anymore. It's about, no, we got a greater responsibility, if you would, to how do we play in the community and be those 3 C's. So, again, looking towards 2025, in the last couple of months, we made some changes to the size of our board and things like that. But what do you hear from other board members of what they're looking for or what they may be seeing us doing or not doing, that, or businesses out there? Are there things that we're maybe should be looking at as you're out and about? I shared my story of what I learned of the connection between the bourbon barrels and Scotch. We're all at these wonderful events. Are you hearing things that we should be aware of or that are starting to creep up towards the end of the year that people are starting to think about?
I think you hear about a lot of different things and you hear a lot of perceptions out there. If you talk to a small business, they may say, well, the chamber cares about big business. If you talk to a big business, they may say, well, the chamber really focuses a lot on small business. And I see that as somewhat of a positive because that means that we're probably helping both, right?
Exactly. Yes.
And I look back to our pillars and I think, okay, there's something for any shape, size of business that can really align within at least one of those pillars.
Sure.
I think one of the biggest things that we just need to continue doing is telling that story within our community to the businesses and say, okay, this is what the chamber's doing to grow their impact. It's not the old days where, you pay your membership dues based on your amount of employees and,
right.
The expectation is you go to a bunch of networking events and you're, back when there were cash registers, they just start opening,
Correct.
Dollars are flying in. There's a great ROI in my opinion, but it's maybe not quite the same as it was before, where the chamber focuses more on really uplifting that entire business community and affecting all business. And looking at the businesses that have the means to contribute to that and say, hey, without you, that impact doesn't grow. And so it's just kind of shifting the narrative of that story. So you hear those perceptions and you just got to really give some people the alternate of that.
Correct.
And kind of give them the facts.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of that too is, again, as we're getting started here, Chelsea was talking a little story about, telling her family she doesn't work for the government, and that we're in what a chamber is. Even close to 35 years now, I'm still kind of amazed at times when people, see the chamber as the 8 staff in this building, and they don't realize what it truly is and the impact that we have on big, small, medium, the whole thing. But one of the things where I'm going with this is, we're just past Thanksgiving, so we got through Black Friday and Small Business Saturday and now Cyber Monday, and somebody told me today is Travel Tuesday. So it's amazing. We're just keep coming up with new names for things. But the impact as an organization, when I look at that, those 1,000+ businesses have on this area, when we talk about supporting local businesses, again, through COVID, this community, every time I thought we hit a limit to how much this community would give back to it, I was shown there was almost no limit to it. How do you see that, or how do you maybe work with your employees to share with them the contribution they make locally, shopping, purchase power, all of that? And as companies, how do you see that really impacting our community on a greater scale?
Well, I think that we do have a special sauce here in the Chippewa Valley. We work with many businesses at Wipfli, and what I'm always so impressed with is the amount of support for the community and support for all businesses. So we see that each and every day how we can give back to the businesses here and grow our own economy.
So looking a little ahead again, trying to look a little ahead at 2025. Later today, we have a Chamber Alliance meeting. And, again, something that we've been working on with our partner chambers, the Menominee and Chippewa Falls chambers, to really develop a stronger relationship between the three and what are those issues that we should be working on. How do you see, or what would you like to see the future of the Alliance be in years to come as we build a stronger partnership with both of those chambers?
I think we just need to build on this foundation. I think if we rewind to January, we probably don't have as strong of an alliance as we have now.
Very good point.
The chambers the CEOs are meeting regularly, collaborating on whether it be events. There's more of a targeted effort to share resources for the Chippewa Valley Rally. That's always been an alliance event. So that's been a little bit more black and white now, that arrangement. I think just the CEOs meeting and talking about where it makes sense to collaborate. I believe we have an Eggs and Issues coming up advocacy with elected officials that represent all three communities. Again, it makes sense to share those resources and provide additional value to all three chambers. I'd love to see that springboard for us into the community of when you look at regional visioning and planning, to be able to have really active chamber leadership involved in that from day one.
Sure.
So that, when we look at the Chippewa Valley as a region and where we want to go, that we've got three really strong chambers at the table to be able to maintain the identity of their communities, but then again, like we have in a lot of things, come together and think about the things where it makes sense to work together.
Sure. So Valerie, sticking with the rally and those from a larger employer here in the community, you're a very strong supporter of that and our Young Professionals program. As that business leader, where do you see the value in your employees being part of the rally and going to Madison and doing that and being part of the Young Professionals? Where do you look at that as what is your ROI for those people?
So I'll go back to what Chancellor James Schmidt talked about with regards to how many students stay here in the Chippewa Valley post graduation, and that number was surprisingly high, 40%.
Yeah.
And so the way I look at the Chippewa Valley Rally, of which being an employer that has chosen to send interns to that event, is getting individuals to find their voice in all areas. So of course, as they're developing in their careers, finding a voice at the business, at the in that stage of their career, but also finding their voice in the community. Public policy plays a lot into that.
Yes, it does.
And unless you're exposed to it, it can be kind of overwhelming.
Right.
Or what does this all mean? From the interns, so we hire interns every tax season, and from the interns that have had that opportunity to go down to Madison and see those discussions unfold, the feedback we get is, again, from a community perspective, this community cares about everything that's going on. And that opportunity to go down there and help drive public policy is just an incredible experience. If you take that over to the YP, and again, those are our future business leaders,
yes,
so we have to be investing in them. It is through all of their community involvement, the businesses who are supporting them in their activities with YP. I just think that is a tremendous program. Again, I contacted the chamber and say, I have 20 interns. Can they come to a YP event in February? The answer was, of course, yes.
Yes, please.
And the feedback that they came back was saying, I didn't realize there was a group of individuals in this community starting out in their careers just like me.
Yeah.
So the connections that are being made is invaluable. It's such a great experience.
And we all know from our careers, those connections, regardless what they are what you need those all the way around. And to be able to have an employer support those, I think is just critical, because we can offer the program, but unless we have the employers who are willing to allow the time and the commitment, it's not going to work. So, for both those, I thank you, because I know it takes them out of where you are, but it gives them that outside knowledge of this is a community that cares. And, again, when we look at the amount of interns we've increased here at the Chamber, our YP program, all of those things, as you've said several times, they are our future leaders, and we need them to understand they have a voice, they can use that voice, but there is also a community here that wants to keep them, because that is and as we've talked, Andy, one of our pillars being workforce, that is one of those initiatives as we get more of those graduates to stay here. But the part of that stat I like, Valerie, when the chancellor talks about that, is he's increased from 15% to over 30-some% now that stay here, but yet there's only 2% of local grads coming to it. So those are transplants coming in. So that's true economic growth. That's true dollars coming to our community there. So
yeah, just maybe I have something to add there with young professionals. I always talk about that as a retention program for our community, keeping our great talent here. And I use that, and I use myself as an example. I feel that young professionals has been a big reason why I've stayed in Eau Claire, of course, till I met my wife. Now she's the big reason, and I'll be honest about that.
Well, there's two more after that.
Yeah. But young professionals kept me here for a long time because, there are other employment opportunities out there.
Sure.
And other communities don't have that. It's not the same type of program that you've got in other communities. So, I met a lot of people who are customers now at my business there. The individual that was the officiant of my wedding, I met in young professionals. People that were in my wedding party were part of young professionals. So they're friends, they're, colleagues, they're business partners, and all of the above. So it really is a program that can help you personally and professionally. And I'm still in it. They haven't kicked me out yet. I think I have another year or two. I don't know. Depends on what the
You're
end
good
is.
until you find out that they've raised the age group to keep you in. Then you got to say, wait a minute here now. Wait. So.
My age still begins with a 3 for about another year, so I'm good.
Oh, yeah, and I can double that. Okay, but anyways. So we've talked a couple of times about key partnerships, and I just want to come back one more time and take a look at that of, from again, to large business, small business, our community, obviously we're the Chamber of Commerce, and then we have our Economic Development Corporation, and we've got a DECI, and we've got the BIDS, and we've got Visit Eau Claire, all with very distinctive goals and drive, but from two different businesses, for how would you share with our listening office of the value or the importance of them all working together at some level? Because you're probably funding at least 2, 3, or 4 of them in different ways. So from your point of view, what would you share with folks that, yes, they're all needed, but we need to work together because?
I think the fear is that if you're not working together, you have duplicated services.
Sure.
And we talk about workforce and a shrinking workforce. No community can afford to have duplicated services or duplicated resources, 2 people doing the same thing at 2 different organizations. So, I think the way that you maximize as a community some of that, shrinking workforce is to be able to really firm up those partnerships and determine who's going to do what and work collectively as a group. Again, you can maintain your own identities, but
right.
You can also, make sure that you're not spending time on things that someone else may be better equipped to do.
So one of the things, and I think, Valerie, you were the first one to challenge me or to suggest that we start taking a look at AI. And it took me about a year to grapple my hands around what AI is and to understand the components. And I will say today, I don't know if it's fair to say I'm a true 100%, but ChatGPT and I, or as we call him, Chad here in the chamber, are on first name basis on a daily. But one of the things that is we have, what would you tell people of the importance of using AI from your standpoint, a large business owner, consulting company, all of that? What would you share with the small business owners, Andy, the importance of AI is out there and you need to what?
I think the reason why people are so hesitant, Dave, to use AI is that in some form or fashion, the world has created a message out there that it's going to take over somebody's job. I look at it quite differently, in fact, that it's not about taking over somebody's job. It's about freeing up time and space to focus on your highest and best use. Yeah. And so the way that I look at embedding AI into any business, big or small, is utilizing it in a way that gives you time back to focus on other things. We started that same conversation with, why do we have interns? Yeah. It's, again, to push work to the right level so highest and best use can be achieved. I think that the jobs of tomorrow probably haven't been even created yet. At least that's what I tell my kids.
Yes, very much.
And so what I like about it is that the utilization of AI is going to allow individuals to work differently and to untap potential that they don't even know they have yet. Yeah. So I would say that my big business to small business is just start. Yep. Until you understand what it could potentially do and give you that time back, that's the biggest efficiency gain you're going to find with using AI.
Dave, I think you probably know more about AI than me.
That is a scary point in itself.
Extremely. So, the perception is, younger kind of person should know AI and technology and be the expert of all things on it. And for me, I think the big challenge is, okay, I need to dedicate some time to learn about it.
Right.
I think I've mentioned this. If I haven't, I'll do it officially. I think that's a role where the chamber could maybe help smaller businesses.
Yes.
Is having some more structured ways to learn the basics so that, the small business owner like myself can go back and instruct the staff on how to use it. Quick little story about my office. I had one employee that said, this is written by another employee or ChatGPT with an eye roll. And I just kind of bat that away like, whatever. She's probably spending way less time on this because she's utilizing AI than she would if she tried to wordsmith this forever. Right. So, I see that as a benefit. I'm thankful, when I have, people that really want to embrace it. I think if you're not embracing it, you probably just don't understand it.
Right.
And so that's not any slight against anyone on my team, but they're probably just like me where it's like, okay, I don't really understand the value of this. And so that's an education piece that I think we all need to prioritize.
Well, and as we've talked about it, and from the chamber standpoint, a couple of different conferences, I would say is, especially for small businesses, look at AI as that new employee. You've just added a staff person that you're not paying all of those other things for. But again, it's going to, Valerie, your point, it's going to make everybody, much easier. But I've heard two, I won't call them quotes. I have a dear friend is a trial lawyer, not in this state, so he's clear. And I was talking to him about the ethics of using Chad and, all of that. And he said, David, I will tell you, I've been doing this long enough. Using AI is no different than when I started and I was dictating all of my correspondence to my secretary who cleaned it all up and made it sound really good. It's just I've got a different secretary today. And that's, and from one of my relatives who was working for a very high-end tech firm, he reminds me on a weekly basis when we talk, remember, Uncle Dave, Chad's not going to spit anything out if you don't ask it a question. So it's giving you what you want, just in a format that can be used on a much quicker basis. So let me take this a little bit farther. Andy, you said, talking to small businesses, it's learning from a perspective of a small business owner. What would you like to see the chamber do in helping a small business understand what AI, and I'll give it to you in one of two ways, baby, because, always with a small business, we struggle with what's the right time to hold a conference or a meeting, that fits in. So is it an hour, 2-hour session or something, or is it us doing something maybe? Again, let's talk about interns. Do we go to the university or CVTC, get 3, 4, 5 interns who understand this, and they can literally package it and bring it to you in your workplace where your employees, and you could say, you know what, I'm going to invest in all of you for an hour over lunch. We're going to learn the basics of AI.
Great. I'd never thought of the second part. So, okay, so how the chamber can help with AI. I think from a conference or seminar perspective, for me, it's shorter,
okay.
Just because there's maybe not as many. I mean, everyone has a hectic and busy schedule, but, if it can be something where it's an hour or two to learn something and structured and it's on my calendar, great, then I'll go.
Sure.
If it's on me, and part of this is a me problem, but it's like, okay, I'm going to set aside time this week to do it. And then, say you have a little fire that you got to put out at your business, and then it's like all of a sudden it bumps down the priority list, and it's easy for it to fall off. The intern concept that you mentioned of, having dedicated individuals that can come in to you and teach the team, that's very attractive to me because it's, it's easy.
Sure.
It's something over lunch. Heck, I'll buy the team lunch. Right. That'll get them to show up, and then they just got to listen to, what's going on there.
Right.
And, I think the challenge there would be to know a little bit about the business you're going into so that you can apply what's relatable. Okay, this is a business of 5 people, is my business. But if the intern's coming to me or going to Valerie, it may be a little bit different about how you'd apply that AI. So you'd have to have a little bit of training there, I would say. But that sounds very attractive to me just because it's simple.
Sure. Valerie?
I think, Andy, before that intern comes into your business, it's going to ask AI, how do I teach a company of 5 all about AI?
Probably. And, that would be really smart and something, again, I didn't think about because I know less about AI than Dave.
And again, folks, that's not saying a lot. So let's.
I had it draw me a picture once, and let's say it was nothing to write home about.
You do touch on a really important point, though, Andy. Whatever format the content is delivered from a training and development standpoint, it has to have merit to the individual business owner on how AI is going to make my life easier. AI has to be thought about as the easy button. Yeah. So unless there can be a direct link on how is this going to give me time back, how is this going to improve the quality of my deliverable, if you will, until that link is made, it is hard to set aside specific time for that. So it's finding that easy button. But I love that idea.
Well, and I think, what I'm learning from people much smarter than Andy and I when it comes to this, and again, that's not setting the bar high. When you're talking about it is first starting with people to remind them, whether most of them don't know it, but they've been using AI for the last 5 years. I mean, sorry to tell you, but Siri and all these other things, that's all AI, folks, so it's out there. But I think your point, Valerie, is really critical of how is this going to make it easier? How is this going to simplify my life? And I know personally, I can just share, we had a company, one of our members come in, sit down with the staff and I to literally show us, this is how you use ChatGPT. It's like, oh, that's it? Okay, now I can, okay, yeah. And it showed me how it's going to make my life easier when I got to do things. And again, when I struggled with that, okay, that ethical question of, is it me writing it, is it them? It's just, I'm still approving it. It's again, going back to my trial lawyer's comment, it's just a different secretary today. It's somebody who's going to do it just as fast and faster because it's coming out in about 3 seconds versus whatever else it was. So if I look back on 2024, and again, we talk about the hospital, and we are instrumental in helping secure funding for the new, science building and UWEC and some of those things. A lot of times I would get questioned, Dave, why is the chamber involved in that? What's a science building got to do with the community? Why did you feel, it was important to stand up a task force or, those kind of things and we talked earlier about that's looking at it from the community's viewpoint, but from the inside, Chamber, why do you think that's important, Andy, that we're involved in those things, that either, forming it or we're a partner in it or whatever? Why do you see a value to the community, to the Chamber, for us to step into those things?
So I think it's somewhat simple. If you want your businesses to grow, they're going to need more people. And if you're going to need more people and you're going to need to pull from outside areas, your community needs to be able to be a place that people want to live.
Yep.
And there's a lot of pieces to that. You need to have availability and quality of healthcare, which is why we really convened that task force and tried to take a lead role in the healthcare situation. I've done many ribbon cuttings for various housing developments, whether it be multifamily homes, apartment buildings, all those kinds of things. And you see all that development going on, and people ask me, why is the Chamber involved in housing? Well, because we need housing in a lot of different categories. We need affordable housing. We need multifamily housing. We need apartments. Each individual that may work for one of our businesses may have a different viewpoint on how they would like to live.
Yeah.
And so we need to be able to offer all those options as a community to be able to attract those workers. And so I think it's important to really support those developers and the increased housing supply across the scope, and to be able to have people to want to come here. You mentioned a science building. That kind of ties back to healthcare. I don't think it's any secret that in the rural areas, there's deserts for healthcare access. Yes. And I know some of both the science building and probably to some extent pieces of Sonatag are really going to look at rural healthcare innovation. How do we deliver that healthcare access to those rural areas? So again, they're facing more workforce shortages than we are, even in Eau Claire. So again, helping that greater Eau Claire area, I think, helps the Chippewa Valley as a whole. Some people don't want to live in a town as big as Eau Claire,
sure,
but they'd maybe want to live in, Stanley. Okay, well, how are they going to get the things they need there? We still kind of have our reach there. So, I think all those things are really important when it comes to science. You've got the university and you've got Mayo, and the way I've always said it, maybe it's too simplified, but if we get a stronger pre-med program at the university and we're getting more medical students here and they're, getting their education and their clinicals at facilities in this area, it's a heck of a lot easier to retain that person here once they've come here than if they went to school somewhere else and we're trying to get them to come work for Mayo or Marshfield or someone else. So it's kind of back to that old adage of customers. It's a heck of a lot easier to retain a current customer than to go out and get a new one.
Correct.
So if you look at that student as a customer or a resident of Eau Claire, hopefully it's easier to retain them. So, again, that science building can be a huge workforce driver in healthcare, which then has that ripple effect across different industries.
Yeah. So as, again, large business owner, representative, small business owners, we look at right now, Eau Claire, really the Chippewa Valley, is that economic engine to the state of Wisconsin. And before anybody tells me, no, it's not, take Milwaukee and Madison out of this because they are who they are. The rest of the state can't compete just because they are there. But you do that. You remove them. And this area truly is the economic engine for the state of Wisconsin. A lot of what you talked about, Andy. So from the standpoint of, maybe go at this in two ways. First of, what would you hope that, as we grow, do you see any obstacles or concerns maybe from either local government, state government that could hamper what we're experiencing here in growth, and that, have them take a second look at think about what you're doing, because, certainly the one thing we want from government is not to stop economic development, because the thing is, we all know once you pause that, you are many years trying to rebuild it. And so we're on a trajectory, but do you see anything, or have you heard anything in the community that there are some concerns about, oh boy, some of these things are going on and that could have a negative effect? And
I just look at, as far as barriers, maybe, trying to limit unnecessary red tape to get things done. We've talked over and over about how time is valuable, and if things take more time, a developer may say, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Right.
This isn't worth the time.
Yep.
I need to get this built, and I need to get a return on my investment. And if we as a region make it difficult for them to do that, they will find somewhere else.
Sure, exactly.
So I think it's just kind of keeping a pulse on that. And I think the city and the county typically do a good job with that. But I think some of these other entities we've mentioned with, the EDC, the Chamber, Visit Eau Claire, all those other leading organizations, we can kind of, I hate to say be that watchful eye, but we can be that outside perspective and trusted perspective of city government and county government to say, hey, maybe you should take a look at this. And it may be better served coming from us than someone else.
Yeah. If you were to sit down at a local establishment and run into somebody who's not an investor in the chamber, what would you tell them about who we are and why it's important they become an investor? And again, for our audience, we've really gotten away from a membership platform to truly investors and allowing companies to invest at the level they want to with those things. But what, as a longtime investor, as a company, you've been here for a long time, Valerie, what would you tell that business owner, large, small, or medium, it's critical that they be an investor in the chamber?
Well, I think the number one reason is because the chamber is the catalyst for the entire business community. And if you want to be a business owner in this community, why not invest in an organization that's passionate about the same things that you're passionate about? Passionate about advocacy and policy, passionate about workforce development, passionate about training and development for your own associates, depending on the size of entity you are.
Sure.
I think that sometimes the chamber's a well-kept secret. We have a lot of businesses. We have a lot of investors, which is fantastic, but would love to have that conversation with any business on why, because it's absolutely impactful to your business and you live here, to your community.
Right.
I look at it as a small business and I look at shared values. So I think, that's similar to what Valerie said. So I'll maybe just go off of that. But, even though maybe a high percentage of our events isn't still networking and business development, that's still a huge piece of what we do and something I see value in.
Yep.
I meet tons of people through chamber activities or the board or committees or whatever it may be. So that piece is still there for that direct ROI that a lot of people are looking for. But, I think the question I would ask them is, what are your biggest challenges? And when they tell me, I could probably point to one or more of our pillars in the work we're doing that can help solve that challenge. You say that any business is benefited by the chamber, whether or not you're an investor.
Correct. Absolutely.
And that is kind of where we're at. So a business could say, well, let someone else kind of tackle that. Well, if you don't do it and you have the means to do it, you can't just rely on other people to do it for you. Because if you don't be part of that solution, then you're going to be part of what makes that a problem.
Correct.
And makes that impact slow down or go away. It could be said just like any, nonprofit that's maybe serving a certain population. You may say, I'm not going to donate. I'll let the big boys do that.
Sure.
But it takes all donations, to be able to serve a person, and the same could be a business community. So I would look at it maybe similarly.
Okay. And again, for our listeners, Andy, you kind of said it earlier to a point, some feel we're only here for big business, others for small business. Again, of all of our investors, about 75% are businesses with less than 20 employees. So when you view us or think of us that we take care of just, the big companies, 75% is 20 or fewer employees. And that's the bulk of who, Main Street, that's truly who we are. And so we do need them all. So if you are a non-investor and you want to learn about more details of who we are, what we do, and again, how can you be part of the future of this area? Again, I'm looking at two people who for the most part have been here pretty much your whole lives. So, sitting where we are, you can go back 20 years and remember what the cesspool looked like downtown, just to put it bluntly. But again, this all happened because some people made some strategic decisions to help change it. That's what we're looking for. We want those businesses that want to be part of this and say, we want to continue this growth. We want to continue this area, and make sure there is enough here that people want to live here. One of the first things I remember learning when I came here, after the close of Uniroyal, was that between some public and private leadership in this area, they really wanted to focus on build a community people wanted to live in and not go chase that next smokestack. And I think slowly we've done that over time, and we just need to figure out kind of how to continue that and build that where people of all sizes, shapes, forms feel comfortable and want to live in a community that is very accepting. And I think this area is that. Valerie, you said something earlier, is that we got that secret sauce, that there's something here about, at the end of the day, we're all going to work together to get somebody through that. And again, we saw it through COVID. We saw it through the task force in a hospital issue. We're going to start seeing that, I believe, housing, as we bring the unhoused folks and bring that group together. And it's going to take all of us to fix these things. And there's a spot for everybody. So I guess as we look to wrap up, I would give you both an opportunity that, anything that we didn't get a chance to touch on, or any other things you want to share with our audience about your time. Andy, I guess maybe we'll do this in two parts. Look at, you were actually on the hiring committee. So some people can say that's good or bad. But, that's where I first got an opportunity to meet you, and you were on the board as a rep for the YPs, and then now you're on the executive committee. What has your experience been like? And again, how would you share that for others to get involved?
Yeah, I think it all starts with pursuing leadership positions, as part of Young Professionals. And I, got encouraged by Katie Kiley, who was the director at the time, to apply for the committee, which is now the YP board. And you can take a leadership role there and get elected onto this. And I did that. And I sit in a meeting. I thought, I'm going to run one of those one day. And so, how do I try to pursue that, right? To try to develop that network. And, it's kind of just all those steps beyond there. You mentioned the hiring committee. That was a huge professional development opportunity for me. And I used to always joke with the others in the room. I was like, I'm the token young person here. And they said, no, you're not. You've earned your seat. I'm like, sure. Don't treat me like I'm stupid. I'll take it. I'll take being the token young person, because I got that experience that no one else got,
right. Yep.
And I still use some of the things I learned in that process today when I'm doing my hiring. But again, that was kind of another kind of springboard in ways that I've been able to utilize the chamber to try to give myself professional development opportunities and try to look at that next thing. As far as this year, I've learned a ton about our community. I've gotten to go to a lot of different events. I've got to welcome a lot of new businesses. And, those have all been very valuable to me, to be able to learn some of the stories of people that have decided to get started here, that have decided to expand here, that have decided to join us after being in the community for a very long time. You can hear some of those stories of why, and they can see some of that momentum. And it's very encouraging and energizing to be able to see that when you're out and about in the community representing the chamber. So that's been a great opportunity for me.
Yeah, so I was very lucky that when I moved here, I actually have lived in Eau Claire for about 25 years, but I was traveling. So I really wasn't boots on the ground here very often.
Sure.
And when I joined Wipfli 15 years ago, that's the first thing that actually Mark Faunus did. He said, you're going to go to Leadership Eau Claire, and you're going to do that program. And I'm like, why? And he said, come back to me in 9 months.
Yeah.
And it's amazing as I went through that program, and my class, even today, when we're out and about at any of the chamber events, it is amazing to me, 15 years removed, how many of us are in leadership positions at our companies and still connected. It's great when you walk into any event and you have all of those individuals to talk to. So for me, it was having somebody who grew up in this community, very passionate about the chamber itself, and passing that legacy on to fellow Wipflians, right? So that's what I'm trying to do as well.
Okay.
We know that this community has been, we started here 100 years ago, and we're very proud of that legacy and heritage. And so giving that opportunity for others to get involved with the chamber, as Andy mentioned, maybe it's starting with YP, maybe it's starting with a committee, maybe you're building up to being on the chamber board someday. It challenges yourself personally. Professionally, obviously, we've talked about all the benefits, but personally, I feel like I grow with each opportunity and each hardship that really is thrown at the chamber that we need to figure out together. Yeah. So I feel fortunate that I'm working with so many business leaders in the community. The staff here at the chamber is amazing. And again, professionally and personally, there's just a lot of great things that I have personally grown over time.
Well, thank you both. Again, when I tutor or mentor new chamber execs, and I've got a couple right now I'm working with, I really encourage them to make sure they develop and get a strong board. I thank both of you, for everything you do, and all of our board members. But also, I think sometimes for nonprofits in general, and Andy, we're at the United Way for a couple of years. Sometimes I don't know that the execs are open enough to be able to at least work with their executive committee to identify strengths and weaknesses of who can do what. And I really appreciate, I think, how, between myself and the 8 of you, really have developed that core, here's what we need to do, here's what we need to focus on. And it just, as I've come over this last year, I would say one of the highlights for me was really seeing that come together at the retreat back in June, of having that day before everybody else came, and just great conversation about what can we all be focusing on. And you said that several times, Valerie, about what are the strengths and who's going to do what, and again, being smarter. So thank you for both of you for your leadership on the board, and I think the years ahead for the chamber are very exciting. I think we're still in the infancy of the new ways we look at a chamber and the things that we do within our communities. But I just think it's very exciting that we're in an area. One of the things that I look at is we're not trying to dig out of a hole as many communities are right now, that we're trajectorying on the top of it. And we just need to figure out, to collectively as a region, how do we make sure we kind of keep people into that area. So, and I think the chamber, and I believe the chamber can play a major role in that. So thank you both. We appreciate it. And we just want to remind everybody, on Thursday, January 30th is Oh What a Night. It's our annual meeting, and this year we will be at Sonatag. We just did a walkthrough the other day, so looking very forward to that. And you'll be able to see both these people on stage underneath a bright spotlight. And bright is putting it mildly. I went blindness there for a couple of minutes when they turned it on, but looking forward to that. So that event is open on our website, so go ahead and get registered. And again, just thank you all very much, and have yourself a wonderful holiday season.
All right, that wraps up today's episode of Talking Point. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you to Dave, Andy, and Valerie, and of course our media sponsor, Royal Credit Union. Have a wonderful holiday season, and we'll catch you in the next one.